All right, everyone. So just like a Swiss clock, we're right on time to kickstart today's Tech Quarterly Meetup. I have the pleasure of having with me Greg McMullen from Segev LLP. This is a session hosted by Segev LLP. It's a tradition at our meetups. It's the crypto catch-up of this quarter. And what else we're going to talk about? We're not going to talk about Apple's new augmented reality headset. We're going to talk about cryptocurrencies, right, Greg?
That's right. So once again, thank you for having us. Just for everyone who maybe hasn't been on before, Segev LLP is a law firm based in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. We focus on what we call high-risk enterprises. So things like e-gaming, crypto, cannabis, psychedelics, and kind of helping businesses in those markets reach their potential. So a tradition here has been doing a bit of a news roundup before we start. And I had a bunch of stuff lined up over the past couple of weeks, but this week has just blown everything out of the water in terms of crypto legal news. We have what's amounted to really an epic battle going on in the US now between the Securities Exchange Commission, the SEC, and two of the biggest crypto exchanges, Binance and Coinbase. First on Monday, case against Binance, and then yesterday against Coinbase. So in these big filings, the SEC has alleged that both Binance and Coinbase are, number one, operating unregistered exchanges, brokers, and clearing agencies for their trading platforms. And number two, engaging in the unregistered offer and sale of crypto assets through their staking programs. So breaking those down a little bit, the first one is targeted at their exchange business. It says that since they're selling securities on their exchanges, they should have been registered through the Securities and Exchange Commission. And by failing to do so, they were in violation of the law. The second part is targeting the crypto staking programs that these services offer. So both platforms allowed people to lock up cryptocurrencies of various types and receive kind of a regular payment on those cryptocurrencies for being locked up, either through DeFi rewards or through participating in proof of stake. But in this case, rather than running those services themselves, users were doing it through the exchange. Binance faced additional allegations. The SEC filed a total of 13 charges against it and its founder, CZ, or Changpeng Zhao. So the SEC alleged that CZ and Binance engaged in an extensive web, this is a direct quote here, engaged in an extensive web of deception, conflicts of interest, lack of disclosure, and calculated evasion of the law. So the claim alleges that CZ and Binance deliberately evaded and misled US regulators, artificially increased trading volume on their platform, manipulated market-making software to benefit itself and allow it to make more profitable trades, and commingled customer funds with a company that was entirely owned by CZ personally. And so especially that last allegation of commingling raised really nasty memories of FTX. And when we learned that SBF had mingled customer funds with an investment fund that he had owned before its disastrous collapse in late 2022. The SEC also alleged that the Binance Smart Contract Platform token, BNB, and its USD stablecoin are also unregistered securities. So what does all that mean? A few things. Number one, it's a very, very bad day for centralized exchanges operating in the US. There aren't that many of them left now, but it looks like they will not be able to find ways to operate within US law, at least not offering the spectrum of tokens that they have been used to offering, or offering staking services that would compete with DeFi platforms. On a similar note, it's a really bad day for centralized staking pools. It looks like those aren't going to be allowed to fly either. They should be looking over their shoulder right now for potential SEC actions. Number 4, it's potentially a very good day for DeFi. If the major players like Coinbase and Binance are driven out of the US market, it's not like US interest in crypto is going to dry up. US crypto users will turn to DeFi protocols to make their trades, which was already a trend in 2021-22. But if the 2 biggest centralized exchanges aren't able to offer services in the US, there is an opportunity for DeFi platforms to take even more of that market. Another big thing that we learned is how the SEC is thinking about tokens as unregistered securities. So in both complaints that it filed, the SEC gave a non-exhaustive list of tokens that it says are unlicensed securities. And rather than just saying that these were unlicensed securities as it had done in the past, they set out a very long block for each of these tokens: Solana, Cardano, Polygon, Filecoin, Sandbox, Axie Infinity's token, a token called Chili's, Flow, which is used by NBA Top Shot, ICP, Near, VGX, Dash, and Nexo. So rather than just stating that those were unlicensed securities, it dug into each of them to show exactly what they had done that made the SEC think that. Now, notable for its absence from that list is Ethereum. The SEC chair, Gary Gensler, had previously insisted that Ethereum is a security, but more recently in an appearance before Congress that was kind of widely mocked on crypto Twitter, he declined to say what the current thinking on Ethereum was. So by leaving it out of that list, it's not clear whether the SEC has changed its thinking or whether it plans to bring another case against Ethereum specifically. I actually had to check immediately before this session to see if another bombshell case had appeared on the SEC site, but so far nothing. So maybe it plans to treat these more like Bitcoin going forward. Maybe there's a case brewing later this week or later down the road. Time will tell, but that's one thing I'll be watching very closely. So with that roundup out of the way, I'd like to introduce Cole Spencer of Paperclip Labs. We've been working with Cole in helping set up some of the products and services that they're offering. And I'll leave it to Cole to introduce himself and tell us a bit more about his background in the Web3 space and with Paperclip Labs. So thanks for joining us, Cole.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. So my background, I'm one of the co-founders of Paperclip Labs, and we build products for in the DeFi space, and work a lot of the times with different DeFi protocols or teams to kind of design and build products. So how did we start? I like to say that we accidentally started Paperclip Labs. Back in 2020, we were really interested in the kind of DeFi summer was taking off, and we were really interested in that space, and really interested in kind of the compound protocol itself and historical yields over time. There was no data on this, so we ended up kind of pulling that data and sharing that with the community there. And at the time, the grants program at Compound was just kicking off. So they said to us, we'd love for you to, if you want to build a dashboard for us, we'd love for you to do that. We had thought that would be a really cool idea, and ended up building a dashboard. And from there, kind of continued to kind of pick up more clients as we went along. So it was a happy accident, I think, starting the company. From there, we've kind of moved on to build and work with other protocols over time and different teams in the space, building DeFi products.
So I guess one question that we should dig into a bit for the uninitiated, what is DeFi? How do you think about that?
Yeah, DeFi, our decentralized finance, I guess, is a suite of offerings, I guess, in the space that allow people to either invest or use the financial and an alternate financial industry, I suppose, in a way. So that's kind of our view on the DeFi space. So it is decentralized, so there is no kind of centralized party or someone who is controlling the space. It's run by a community or a protocol or a group of people coming together to kind of allow it to exist.
So it kind of operates as a smart contract on a blockchain that people can interact with without having like a centralized entity like Coinbase or Binance running the show, right?
Absolutely.
Perfect. So, so these protocols exist, these smart contracts exist on the blockchain, but there's been historically, I think with all of crypto, and DeFi is no exception, issues with user experience or UX. So we're going to drill into that a little bit today, and I think that's going to be our main focus. So first off, what is user experience and why does it matter?
Yeah, user experience is the entire experience someone has using your product. So you can think of it not just them actually interacting with the product directly, but from before they actually interact with it and afterwards. So kind of that entire experience from the emotional response that someone might have to any kind of feelings that they may have when they're actually interacting with the product itself. It matters because it can be the difference between someone recommending your product to, once they finish using it, recommending it to a friend, or someone completely dropping off and not actually ever using your product for the first time. So when we think of why invest in user experience for the product itself, you can see big returns in customer satisfaction overall, increased engagement of the product. It can provide a competitive advantage sometimes for companies as well. So having a great user experience can, if there are kind of two like similar products in the space, a lot of times people will tend to gravitate towards those with a better user experience. And it can have some really big costs as well. That be reduction of cost, reduction of support, the need for support on your team, and just improving the overall retention of users over time.
So that seems to be a big part of what Paperclip Labs does as far as Web3. Like I was saying, Web3 and crypto and DeFi have kind of notorious UX issues. What is it doing wrong right now? What are the problems that you see out in the field?
Yeah, oftentimes I think a lot of these problems stem down to the technology or the complexity of the technology itself. So one of the biggest pain points that we kind of see with a lot of the products that we design are wallet onboarding. Brand new users come into the space. What does that look like? What does it look like to actually have to get a seed phrase, set up a wallet? Those are some big complexities, especially for the new users who are coming into the space. Then we kind of see other areas of obstacles such as performance and scalability. So a lot of the times you have this, in the traditional space, we have, for example, a centralized entity, let's say Uber, for example. And Uber is very fast when you sign up and decide to get a ride. It arrives within, there's quick feedback, and that ride will kind of appear or come really quickly. A lot of time, but that may not happen in the Web3 space. Because we are using these decentralized networks, there are issues with performance. So let's say the network is busy at the time. There's some design issues around that and some technical limitations around the speed at which a transaction might go through or the cost of the transaction itself. So those are kind of the big areas that we kind of see in the big obstacles that we often see in the space. And it is because it is a new way to kind of interact with products. It is a bit of a learning curve for people, and to kind of explain these intricacies, such as gas, and why do I have to pay? Why do I have to have a different token to pay for a transaction? Or why do I have to pay for a transaction? A lot of times in the space, or in the traditional world, we're used to using a credit card and we don't have to pay for any of those transactions themselves. But in kind of the Web3 space, the paradigm is a little bit different, and the learning curve is there, and does cause a lot of usability issues or user experience issues when it comes to designing and building products.
So Bitcoin launched in 2008. So this is, I guess, will be the 15th birthday of crypto. It's a deeply unpleasant teenager sometimes, I guess. So why through these 15 years have these problems persisted? Like things like seed phrases, like transaction fees have been there from the beginning. So why do you think we've had such a hard time solving those in the crypto world?
Yeah, I think that those type of those kind of early primitives have kind of persisted because we've at first one of the things that happens is I think a lot of times with new technology is you need to bring builders in there to be able to build and continue to innovate and make it move faster. And 15 years is not a long time for technology to continue to have established itself. So over time, we've seen these improvements, and there's some really great stuff coming up in the future that may kind of help around this. But over time, over the last few years, especially in the Ethereum space, it's really about scalability and how can we kind of improve transaction throughput. And the user experience maybe was pushed to the side. And now it's kind of really front and center, trying to onboard more people onto the platform and the networks. So just I think with people coming on and builders coming into this space, that should improve over time. But again, it's still new technology that we are seeing here. So definitely things do take time to improve over time. I think a good example of that might be, the original iPhone. When they first released that, there was only the ability to call and go on and basically go on a browser. There was no app store. There was none of these other things that we think of when we think of the iPhone or the iOS system today. Those had to be built up over time. These systems had to be built. And that's still what's kind of going on in the space now, is these systems and paradigms are all being built.
So I guess one of the popular lines is that crypto is like the internet in the 90s. But what you're saying is maybe it's more like computing in the early 80s, and we're getting kind of the basics of what this new platform might look like in place. And once that infrastructure is there, we'll be able to start actually building things on top of it.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good way to put it.
So how does Paperclip Labs come in? What do you think about when you're trying to solve these problems for customers?
Yeah, this is definitely, this is where we really focus. And a lot of the times when new customers come to us, we want to, a lot of times we want to simplify as much as possible. So simplifying your application, making it feel easy to use, and reducing the clutter. Especially in this space, there is a lot of clutter that does come up. So, what are those things that we can actually remove? And what we think about, how can we make it, make it as simple as possible, and also relate to and create some mental models that someone may already understand in the space. So for example, this idea of, paying with gas, is that maybe more of like a transaction fee or something like that? People are familiar with those type of things. Can we kind of relate those in the space? When we like to work with customers, we think about kind of, I think there's kind of 5 main things we want to focus on for the product. And, your product should solve a problem. And what is the problem that your product is solving? And how can we make sure that those problems are being solved? As users are going through your product, are we able to educate them as they're using it? This is a big one, I think, especially in the space that we work in now, where a lot of times the teams will want to put everything in front of you and explain to you exactly how the product works. But often, and from the design perspective, this comes to design in the Web2 space, we know that people actually don't read. So how can we kind of educate people when they need to understand what they need to do, and make sure that we are giving them enough information to use the product, but not overloading them with information where they want to leave or feel confused. Another big thing is transparency and honesty. It's really easy to lose respect or from your clients or who are using your product. So making sure that you're being transparent about any kind of fee, for example, any type of fees that are coming up in the space, or any type of being just really honest about those transactions that are going to happen are some big wins that you can take. So when we work with clients, we try to make sure that we are being the product is transparent and easy to use as possible. And kind of, again, coming back to those mental models of how can we kind of relate, how can users relate to the different types of experiences in the real world, for example, rather than have them come into learn this new paradigm as well.
So those were the first two, solve a problem, transparency. Were there more that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think some other ones are, again, kind of cutting features. What can you cut and what can you launch with?
Okay.
What is the minimum features that you can release? So your MVP, for example, is, I think, a great is something that, how can you kind of reduce as many features as possible and only release what you actually need? That's something I think a lot of founders and teams, when they come to us, they think a lot about, we need to have this feature that does all these things, but maybe in reality, the user just needs a simple feature, and then we can iterate on that over time. So definitely some big things in the space that when working with clients, we really try to focus on just simplifying products, making them feel usable, as well as just making that how can we kind of make that experience as easy as possible. And when it comes to the design aspect as well, we're not just coming into the UI of the product and designing that. It's design really starts, especially from the smart contract, when developing your smart contracts, because those are touch points that users are actually going to have with your product. So ensuring that you're thinking about design and user experience when you're actually designing and building out those smart contracts as well is really important for you and your team to think about. Because those are going to be those touch points where the users are going to interact with your product.
That's super interesting. So it's kind of a new, like, taking classic design ideas and applying them to this new technology. Like, the principles are still the same. What have you encountered as resistance to those ideas, or are people generally receptive?
I think a lot of times people are very receptive and understanding that we're trying to make the product as easy for someone to use. And if we can kind of relate to those, again, those mental models, and create an easy way for someone to understand a system, those are big benefits that we can kind of give to those users. And the teams that we work with are generally very accepting of trying to make it as relatable as possible when it comes to building products.
So steering this toward DeFi, you have done work with various DeFi protocols. We've talked about the centralized exchanges taking big hits from the SEC and putting those platforms at risk. It's probably an opportunity for DeFi. So what do you see coming in that field? How do you see them being equipped to take advantage of this opportunity?
Yeah, I think this is DeFi's moment to kind of prove that, that's the narrative that for the last while has been, this is decentralized, this is unstoppable, this is going to be this technology that anyone's going to be able to use. And I think this is the opportunity for DeFi to really prove that. Up until this point, DeFi has been, over the last few years, DeFi has really been focusing on building out these primitives, these financial primitives. So loans, lending, exchanges. These types of primitives people are actually now going to be able to take and build on top of them. And I think this is a great opportunity for the DeFi space to really kind of prove, this is a good proving ground, I guess, for the DeFi space to show what it's capable of. So really looking forward to what's going to be coming in the near future on this, particularly around innovation and experimentation. I think if people are going to be pushed into the DeFi space, you're going to see a lot more products be coming up and out of the DeFi space. Definitely more adoption as well. We're already seeing tokens coming off of centralized exchanges and moving into custodial, into wallets. So that's great to see, and really and those are now being put into the kind of the DeFi space. So definitely adoption is looking to be increased as well. I imagine we'll probably see more decentralized protocols pop up over time. And another thing that we're really excited to see is kind of this idea of decentralized front ends as well. So this idea that, are these DeFi protocols, are you going to have multiple different front ends or different products being offered that all utilize these protocols? So it's really cool to see, the last few years, DeFi has just been building these building blocks and primitives. And I think we're going to start to see a lot more adoption of that over time. And people are going to begin to start using these primitives and kind of putting these building blocks together and creating some really interesting financial products.
Very, very quickly, when people think of front end, they think of things like web servers, maybe CDNs, the content distribution networks, kind of things like that. What does that look like in a decentralized world? What is the technology underpinning that?
Yeah, I think what that will be focused on is really focused on kind of working with these protocols and kind of hosting your own front end or a front end somewhere, whether that be and actually interacting with these protocols on top. So definitely some really interesting stuff that's going to be happening in that space, and how teams are going to be actually addressing this is going to be very interesting.
And so this would present the opportunity for things like having one, say, smart contract or protocol that is the banking infrastructure, but then lots of different people being able to build competing front ends to access that, or different ways of linking services together. Is that the case?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's definitely what's going to happen. Is you're going to see these different front ends, but not only front ends. I think different people will begin to take different protocols and pair them together and offer similar or different services for each protocol. So you may see, for example, some really interesting savings accounts being brought up, or some interesting borrowing and lending products that are built on top of these already large borrowing and lending protocols. So, mixing and matching all these together and bringing them all together, I think there's going to be some really interesting stuff coming up in this space in the near future with regards to, and we'll probably start to see more things similar to banking products that are being offered today in the traditional space. So things that people are very familiar with, they may be able to use DeFi as well to kind of access those things.
So we have just under 1 minute left now. I'm going to put you on the spot. What is one kind of wild and out there combination of these kind of financial primitives that you'd like to see, or think that we'll see in the future?
I think one of the things that we're most excited about is the idea of now this might not be a financial primitive, but more so around kind of solving issues around wallet onboarding for users, which is going to be one of the bigger problems that we face in this space now. So this idea of account abstraction and allowing users to have almost smart contract wallets. So maybe you can actually sign up with an email address, or you don't have to worry about managing your seed phrase anymore. You can use social recovery for that. That's something that we're really excited about. And I think there'll be some really interesting things and tools built on top of that that will allow others to easily access these DeFi products and protocols over time.
Well, we'll have to have you come back and tell us more about that as it happens. So thank you very much, Cole, for joining us. I will turn things back to Zoltan. Thank you for joining us for Crypto Catch Up.
Thank you, guys, and thank you for the 250 viewers on YouTube right now. So, Greg, we will be back in 3 months again, right?
See you then.
Yeah, exactly. So, everyone, thank you for joining. Take good care and see you at our next meetup.